much into it. So what if he has no house or car? We're still talking about marrying someone, not marrying their assets. Besides, as we're still young and physically fit, we should work and earn everything we need with our own two hands.
That's enough. Let's go.
Hey, you're quite concerned about the two of them.
Yeah. If you have a friend who will drink with you every day and pour his heart out to you, you would do just the same as me. For sure.
All right, you're a great leader. Applause for you.
Let's go. Are you hungry?
Uh-huh.
Lunch will soon be served.
Geo is becoming more outrageous. He went back to China. Skip meeting the Chamber of Commerce chef.
Don't get agitated. Mind your health, dear. Wenqing called me yesterday. She said she's met the girl that Zhao likes.
Oh, really?
And that's what he flew back to China for. Listen, nail down his engagement to Wenqing as soon as possible.
We'll discuss it with the Wens. Let's go back to China. We'll go in a few days. Have the engagement ceremony. I want to use that moment to announce the collaboration between the two families. It will end Jihao's wild ways. And allow our project with the Wen family to finally get underway.
Okay. I'll call Mrs. Wen right now. We'll discuss it fully.
Oh, that aroma. Tito, you're a saint. Good. We're so lucky. Bon appetit.
Just to be clear, every dish is vegetarian, but so fresh it'll taste even better than meat.
Can I eat now?
Go ahead. That's mashed eggplant, black bean with egg, black fungus with cucumber, and mushroom with cabbage.
It's great. Surprisingly, it's not bad. It's really good.
Here, some black fungus. It has a purging effect. Food in the city is full of toxins. This purges toxins.
Thank you.
Hey, Jun, you've been around this chef for many years. Why haven't you picked up any cooking from him? It's only natural.
And? Listen, Mei. I may be dating you, but if I hadn't met you, I'd have already married you.
I don't date fat guys.
You're really useless. Fill up. I take it back. Taking it back.
Hey, what are you doing?
It seems someone's upset. It's written in her face that we shouldn't share food together.
No, I'm not upset. That wasn't it at all. I'm just envious. You two look so sweet.
Really? Are you jealous?
All right already. Just eat, you guys.
All right. I cooked some soup as well. Do you want some parsley or scallion?
No thanks.
Okay.
Jun?
That's good.
Stop it, you guys are hurting my stomach.
Jun? I want some too.
Okay.
Wait. Why didn't you ask me if I wanted parsley or scallion?
Would you like some parsley or scallion, my lady?
No, thanks.
What are you doing? Eat more chicken.
No, thank you.
You should work some more once you get home to make up for the time I've wasted.
I don't need your encouragement. Working's my life.
But it can't be the only thing.
Listen.
Okay, no quarrel. We had some fun today, right? Will we see each other again?
With that, we end to this edition of Chinese Theater. Tomorrow we'll continue with the drama series titled My Economical Man. Thank you for tuning in and see you tomorrow.
From epic tales of mystery and magic to accounts of battle or time. CRI brings to life China's literary heritage. Join us for A Light on Literature.
Today in A Light on Literature, CRI continues its presentation of Mao Zedong, Men, Not God, a biographical look at China's former Communist Party chairman. Authored by Cri On Kiwisdr, the book looks at Chairman Mao through the eyes of Mao's bodyguard, Li Yinqiao, and is written as a first-person narrative. Li Yinqiao worked for Mao Zedong for 15 years, beginning in 1947, when the People's Liberation Army was embroiled in civil war with the Kuomintang, or Nationalist Party, led by Chiang Kai-shek. Today in CRI's A Light on Literature, Ian Reid narrates part 17 of Mao Zedong, Men, Not God, in which Mao's wife, Jiang Qing, screams at Li Yinqiao and calls him a bastard. Enjoy.
Mao's wife, Jiang Qing, was a woman of regular habits. She never changed her schedule for work and rest, even during those days of the 3 major military campaigns. By contrast, Mao followed a completely different schedule, working 28 hours a day. As a result, when Mao was working, Jiang would often be sleeping, and when Jiang was up, it would be Mao's dinner time. They seldom slept at the same time, and when Mao had some important business on hand, he would work for several days at a stretch without sleep until he was exhausted, and would then be put to sleep by the bodyguards and was not to be disturbed. This meant that Jiang only stayed with Mao once every few weeks, or even months. What does that imply? Jiang was full of complaints. Complaints about anyone or anything, important or unimportant. And on many occasions she would add fuel to a dispute. This also incurred Mao's displeasure and put him on guard. Mao gave me the impression that he could easily be swayed. He would believe what those closest to him said if they repeated it often enough. During work breaks, Mao liked to joke with us, at which times he felt just like the next person. These were the times when we would say whatever we liked to him for fun. Once we teased one of the bodyguards, saying that he couldn't sleep because he had run into trouble with his girlfriend. Mao took it as a joke when he heard it the first time. When he heard it again, he still believed that it was said in jest. But the third time he heard it, he took it seriously and offered to mediate. Once, Mao was told by Shi Jie, a well-known translator, that Gao Gang was a very capable and trustworthy man. After hearing this evaluation of Gao a number of times, Mao was heard saying on more than one occasion that Gao was a fine man. 2 years later, Gao was denounced, together with Rao Shushi, at the 4th plenary session of the party's 7th Central Committee, on account of their disruptive activities against the party. When the session closed, Mao said to Shi, "You told me Gao was a good man, but he engaged in disruptive activities against the party." Shi replied, "What was he when I said that? He was then vice chairman of the party." Mao said nothing more. As Mao's wife, Jiang Qing could easily have put in a good word for someone whom Mao was angry with and calmed things down, like a good wife should. But instead of doing this, she would merely exacerbate the situation, speaking ill of whomever Mao was angry with, or whatever he was unhappy about. And she did that far too often. I remember on 2 occasions Mao just looking at her when she did that, and when she had finished, his saying with a frown, "You're just incapable of getting along well with other people. You can never learn to treat others like friends. You're turning everyone you know into your enemy." I shall never forget what Mao said about Jiang to those of us attending him. "Jiang is always hurting people with that vicious tongue of hers. She's a troublemaker. She'll come to a tragic end after I die." Mao's prediction proved true. Nevertheless, Jiang knew her limitations. Sometimes, when she had something she wanted to tell Mao, but knew that Mao wouldn't listen to her, she would ask someone to speak to him for her, someone she believed Mao would listen to. That's why she ganged up with Mao Yuanxin during the last few years of the Cultural Revolution. At one time, with her talent for entertainment, Jiang was a help to Mao. She provided all of us with some recreation and relaxation during those years when life was extremely hard for us. The best moment of the day was in the evening, After we had finished the day's march and eaten our ration of black soya beans for supper, and were either squatting on our heels or just standing around or slouching on stools against a wall, listening to Jiang sing an aria or two of Beijing opera, or trying to answer her riddles. Jiang would often play Mao some Beijing opera on a phonograph she had brought from Shanghai, whilst I massaged Mao's scalp with a comb. There were only a few such records which were played over and over again, but Mao never seemed to find them any the less enjoyable for that. After hearing them each time, he would smile lovingly at Jiang, or would say good-humouredly, "Nice records, play them again." During the first few years after Mao moved to Beijing, Jiang concerned herself with trying to maintain a balance between work and rest for him. When Mao had been working too long, Jiang would tell her daughter to get him out for a walk, or get him to play a bit of mahjong, or she would have a movie shown for him. She would say to Mao, who didn't like movies, "Come to the movie. If you don't, the boys in the bodyguard will never see it." In the exhibition hall, Mao would say to us, "I wouldn't have come if it weren't for you." I can't recall now just what caused them to drift apart on matters of entertainment. Maybe it came about imperceptibly. Maybe it had to do with Mao's advancing age. Maybe it was the result of Jiang's personality and the change of life. Maybe... Anyway, it happened, and this is what I saw happen. As Mao gained in age, his physician's concern for his physical well-being increased. In addition to swimming and walking, he made it a rule for Mao to dance once or twice a week so that he would get enough exercise to keep fit. Mao liked to swim and dance in the noisy company of young people. The fun he shared with them would make him forget, temporarily, the loneliness which he felt when he worked, ate, and slept, for he did all that alone. On such occasions, aware of Mao's needs, we young people would shed all inhibition, talking, laughing, and shouting with abandon, with no respect for age or position. By contrast, Jiang was deadly serious, looking at us disapprovingly, taking all the fun out of these occasions. Beginning in 1957, she became increasingly irritable. The doctor attributed this to the change of life, saying that this was when a woman tended to become edgy and easily provoked, even by such things as wind and noise. We were then too young to understand what the change of life meant. All we knew was that Jiang was in poor health, and the bodyguards would say privately, "Her position's changed. She's now an important secretary with the rank of vice minister. The higher your position is, the more complicated your malady becomes."
You're listening to A Light on Literature, CRI's presentation of timeless works of Chinese literature. Today's narration by Ian Reid is taken from the biographical work Mao Zedong, Men, Not God.
In 1957, when Mao and Jiang were on vacation in Hangzhou, Mao was invited to a dance one day, hosted by the party provincial committee at a hotel. Mao went without Jiang. It was a lively gathering, filled with laughter, and we danced until our shirts were wet with sweat. Tian Yunyu met a girl at the dance, who was later to become his girlfriend. She was a member of a song and dance ensemble. We had a lot of fun that evening. Subsequently, the leaders of the party committee, encouraged by the credit Mao's doctor gave them for providing Mao with the rest and relaxation he so badly needed, invited Mao to another dance 2 days later at another hotel. All the partners at that dance, members of a song and dance ensemble, already knew us. The moment Mao appeared, in the company of his bodyguards, his doctor, and his secretaries, they came up to us, greeting us noisily like old friends, promising a jolly beginning to another pleasant evening. But this free and easy atmosphere disappeared as quickly as it had arisen. The dance hall suddenly fell uneasily silent, and the young people, who would otherwise have been standing around Mao, chatting with him, had now retreated to two sides, and were standing there in all seriousness, clapping dutifully. Walking pompously behind Mao was Jiang Qing. She looked haughty and standoffish, making everyone in her presence feel nervous and keep a cold and respectful distance from her. Mao tried to dissolve their inhibition by cracking jokes, but to no casual and abandoned atmosphere Mao had hoped to recapture was lost. Mao observed all this with visible displeasure. Sitting in an easy chair, he grumbled to me, "She spoiled everything." The band had started playing, and just as the dancers were beginning to take to the floor, someone was heard shouting, "Stop the music! It's terrible! Play another tune!" It was Jiang. With the air of a hostess, she went up to the band, drawing everyone's attention to herself as she did so. The leader of the band named a number of tunes for her to choose from, and she dismissed each one of them as no good, in much the same way as a maestro would reject an inferior piece of musical composition. Whilst those in the band and those of us waiting for the music to recommence were surprised by Jiang's knowledge of music, Mao was left breathing heavily in anger. It was a long time before she finally authorized several tunes for the evening, and the dance began. Jiang had the first dance with Mao. To do her justice, I must admit that Jiang was an excellent dancer. She was all elegance and grace, but she danced too formally and lacked vitality. Mao dropped me a hint, and I immediately lined up the other bodyguards. When the music started again, Li Liancheng went up to Jiang so that Mao could switch partners. Just as the young people were bringing the dance to a kind of climax, Jiang, who enjoyed taking people by surprise, was suddenly heard shouting again, and this time she held her hands over her ears. "Too loud! It's too loud! The noise is deafening! Don't you know anything better than playing so loudly? Can't you play it softer? Still softer!" The whole evening, Jiang was on everyone's nerves, leaving Mao in dismay. When he returned to the guest house, Mao said, breathing heavily in anger, "What a killjoy! She spoils all the fun wherever she is. I just don't want to see her again." After Jiang behaved like that several times, Mao began to shun her. Many times Mao said to me, or Tian Yunyu, or Feng Yaosong and the other bodyguards, "Jiang's a killjoy. She makes everybody suffer." Mao would leave any place he was stopping off on a journey when he learned that Jiang was coming to join him. That is what he did when he was in Guangzhou in 1959. He said, "She'll make us miserable when she gets here. We'd better leave now." Mao's unexpected departures naturally infuriated Jiang, so she would take out her anger on her attendants. She did this several times without warning. One such unwarranted outburst of anger was even felt in Beijing. This is what happened. One day, Li Liancheng had just entered Jiang's room when he was greeted with an angry shout from Jiang. "Get out of here! Take off your shoes before you come in!" Li retreated as ordered, took off his shoes, and entered in stocking feet. Jiang, combing her hair in front of a mirror, said in a bad temper, "I just can't stand your heavy steps. It's uncivilized the way you walk." Li looked at the floor. The carpet was more than 1 inch thick. A glass wouldn't have made any noise if it fell on it. Earlier that year, Jiang, accompanied by Li and myself, had visited Lin Biao to ask him for his advice on ways to recuperate health. Lin told her to avoid 3 things: the sun, noise, and cold wind. To achieve this, Lin said the window curtains must be black in color, the air moderate in temperature, and carpets be fitted from wall to wall. From then on, Jiang would ask to have her room fitted with wall-to-wall carpeting wherever she was to ensure quiet. "Is it cold outside?" Jiang looked at Li in the mirror. "No, it's not cold, Comrade Jiang Qing." After she did her hair, Jiang rose, announcing, "I'm going out for a walk." Just as she stepped out of the door, Li heard Jiang cry out angrily in a shrill voice, "But it's so cold! What do you mean it's not cold?" "I'll get you some more clothes." Li was nervous. "It's such a fine day, and it'll do you good to move around a bit in the sun." "Is that what you really mean?" "Of course it's not. What you really want is to see me catch cold." Thus saying, she slammed the door shut and returned to her room. She was not going to take a walk that day. Li, smiling wryly to himself, was suddenly filled with pity for Jiang. With everyone trying to shun her, Jiang grew increasingly irritable and lonely, and the more bad-tempered she became, the more everyone tried to avoid her. Soon, Jiang sent her time hung heavy on her hands, Jiang would often spend all day doing nothing but playing cards. She was a bad loser. She always wanted to win, not easily, but the hard way. Playing cards with her could be a nightmarish experience. During that game, when Li followed with a wrong card, Jiang flew off the handle. "Get the hell out of here! I don't want you!" Jiang threw the cards down on the table, and just as Li was going out of the door, she shouted again, "Not that easily! Stand there! That's the punishment you deserve!" The door closed, and Li was left standing in the corridor. An hour later, Jiang's doctor came and quietly told Li to leave, as Jiang had fallen asleep and come back later when she got up. But Li obstinately refused. The doctor got Su Hanhua, director of the Guangdong Provincial Public Security Bureau, to mediate. Su, not believing that he could talk Jiang into dropping the matter when she was angry, asked Li to apologize to Jiang. Li refused. Making a mistake in a card game was no reason for an apology, so he remained standing there until Jiang got up. Li's feelings were so deeply hurt that he cried. He called long distance to tell me about the incident. Mao was unhappy when he learned from me what had happened. After a short pause, he said with a frown, sighing sadly, "I'm sorry Li's been made to suffer in place of me. Recall him and take him away from Jiang. If he can't afford to make her angry, he can at least afford to stay out of her way. When she has no one around her, she'll have no opportunity to throw her weight about." Li left Guangzhou for Beijing by train that same evening. When he saw Li, Mao said, "I'm sorry Jiang Qing raged at you. Please don't take it to heart for my sake. She's not feeling well. Forget it." Since Jiang Qing spared no one, Mao said to everyone in the bodyguards, "Please don't take it to heart for my sake." But Mao took it to heart himself. He grew increasingly reluctant to see Jiang. Such was the married life of this couple. They ate, slept, and worked apart. They couldn't even spend an evening of entertainment together. By the time I left for my new job in Tianjin, I had the feeling that there wasn't much affection left between them.
China Radio International presents A Light on Literature, a journey through the great works of fiction, poetry, history, and biography that define China's unique cultural gift to the world.
Chapter 14. Mao the Mediator. If Jiang Qing throws a tantrum at you, try your best not to take it to heart for my sake. Mao said that to us bodyguards many times. But when a dispute between his wife and his bodyguards was referred to him as acting head of the family, he would find it difficult to settle. Quarrels between myself and Jiang were not unusual, but they were negligible. Only on 2 occasions did they become violent, disproportionately violent, because they were over mere trifles that arose when we played cards. In the 1950s and early 1960s, Jiang did not have much work to do, as Mao kept her out of political affairs. She passed her time by playing cards. Unlike Mao, who was a good loser in games, Jiang was a bad one. Mao seldom played cards. Only once in a while did he have a game of Go, and most of the time he was the loser. He didn't mind losing, but he would be unhappy if his opponents made things easy for him. So those who knew this would play aggressively, and when Mao knew the game was lost for him, and that he couldn't do anything to save the situation, he would accept his defeat with a deep sigh, as though such experience provided him with a rare opportunity to experience defeat, and made life all the more Down at the table, I noticed that Jiang was in a bad mood. That made me nervous, and the more nervous I grew, the worse I played, and the worse I played, the moodier she became, so much so that the nurses found it hard to let us win. At one point, I followed with a wrong card again. Before I could withdraw it, Jiang had thrown her cards down in front of me. "I quit! Now, what makes you think I'm dodging the campaign?" My heart sank, and I grew pale with fright. As responding to a military command, I shot up from my seat and stood at attention, wondering how on earth she had come to know that. A nationwide campaign against corruption, waste, and bureaucracy had started the year before. Back in Yan'an, Jiang had never liked any of the rectification campaigns in the party and had grown afraid of them, resented them even, after the violent quarrel she had had with Mao over her past history. So any political campaign, whatever its purpose, would find her trying to evade it. Many times I heard her talk resentfully about such campaigns. Those people should know better than spending their time framing others. Be careful, you may persecute others this time, but you won't be spared the next time. So when this campaign against the three evils, corruption, waste, and bureaucracy, began, she absented herself from the activities of her party group for some time. When Xu Yefu, a confidential secretary, asked me, "Why is it that each time there's a political campaign, we find her away?" I replied casually, "To dodge it, that's why." Later, Jiang learned of what I had said, and now she was throwing it back at me. Her accusation left me speechless. I grew a bit afraid. "You young bastard!" Filled with anger, she was a frightful sight.
And that was part 17 of Mao Zedong, Men, Not God, written by Chuan Yanshi, narrated by Ian Reid, and brought to you on China Radio International. Join us next time in A Light on Literature, in which Mao orders his wife to shut up. If you missed anything, be sure to check out our website at www.crienglish.com and click on the link for A Light on Literature.
Heard of Shakespeare. You're acquainted with Charles Dickens. You may even know the Odyssey of Homer. But have you read the great Tang Dynasty poets of China? Or heard the epic tales of the Monkey King? Or the great battles of the Three Kingdoms? These and more are brought to you in A Light on Literature, your journey through the fertile imaginations of China's writers, poets, and historians, only on CRI.
I want to learn Chinese.
其实并不难 It can be fun.
欢乐汉语 Chinese Studio.
Perfect Chinese your way in only 5 minutes a day. Welcome to our Chinese studio. 早上好, everybody. I'm Yajie.
Hello, I'm Cam. 早上好.
Last month we learned some expressions for shopping. 元, 角, and 分.
元, 角, 分. Now, I also remember 块 and 毛, like 6块 and 毛.
Right. 6块 is 6 yuan, and 1毛 is 10th of a yuan.
Okay, so then if I want to buy something, I can ask the seller in Chinese, 这个多少钱? How much is it? Right?
Exactly. 这个多少钱? How much is it? If you're not satisfied with the price in China, you can begin bargaining. And that is what we are going to learn today. Words of the day. Today we'll learn expressions for bargaining. And they are 太贵了,能不能便宜点? That's too expensive. Could it be a little bit cheaper? All in today's Chinese studio. When you visit a market in China, you may hear the salesperson asking you, 您好,您想买什么? Hello, can I help you?
您好,您想买什么?
想 means want to. 想,
想,
买 想买什么 What do you want to buy? What would you like to buy?
您想买什么？您好，您想买什么？
我想买香蕉
您要多少
，8个，多少钱
？12块钱。您好，您想买什么？
我想买一件衬衣，多少钱
200块。
太贵了，能不能便宜点儿
100块。
好的，我要了。
If you're not satisfied with the price, you can say, 太贵了，能不能便宜点儿 That's too expensive. Could it be a little bit cheaper?
太贵了。太 means too, and 贵了 means expensive. 太贵了 too expensive.
能不能能 means could. 能不能 means could it be.
能不能
便宜 means cheap. 便宜
便宜
点儿 is short for 一点儿 means a little bit.
点儿？
便宜点儿
便宜点儿？
So together it's 能不能便宜点儿
能不能便宜点儿？
Well, in recent years, there are more and more supermarkets and department stores with fixed prices in China. As a result, there are fewer and fewer opportunities for true bargaining.
您好，您想买什么
我想买一条裤子，多少钱
？400块。
太贵了，能不能便宜点儿
350块。
好的，我买了。
您好，您想买什么
我想买件衬衫，多少钱
？500块。
太贵了，能不能便宜点儿
400块。
好的，我要了。
Keyword reminder. Today we've learned some bargaining expressions, and they are 太贵了，能不能便宜点儿 That's too expensive. Could it be a little bit cheaper? Okay, that's it for this edition of Chinese Studio. Our question of the day is, in Chinese, how do you begin bargaining when you're not satisfied with the price? Please tell us in an email. Class is over. 再见。
明天见。
Send your answer to the following email address, chinese@cri.com.cn. You can also log on to www.crienglish.com. Click Learn Chinese to know more about the program and to access to a lot more Chinese learning materials.